Welcome to the Shunned podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Today we have a great look into the narcissism displayed by many of Jehovah's Witnesses. The tone-deaf way in which they react to others around them while they sit around admiring their own beauty. I don't know if you know the myth of Narcissus, but it's about a man named Narcissus that's so beautiful he's followed by admirers. It's different admirers depending on the version of the story you get. But essentially, Narcissus ends up being very rude to those that admire him and his beauty. So he's taken to a lake where he sees his reflection, and he's cursed to sit there admiring himself in that reflection. Unable to pull away and unable to have the object of his desire, he ultimately either melted away into the flower that now bears the name Narcissus, or he committed suicide. Narcissists can't really take the perspective of others. They can't see outside of themselves. It's my assertion that Jehovah's Witnesses both attract and create narcissists. They view people as objects, not people with their own feelings and perspectives. Only their thoughts and feelings matter, and everything is about being right, and of course, they're always the ones in the right. At best, others are a problem to be fixed or dealt with. If you think about it, the God Jehovah that they worship, according to their doctrine, is going to come and kill roughly 8 billion people in a mass genocide just so Jehovah's Witnesses can live on earth in culty peace and harmony. To literally wipe out the mass of humanity so that you can live as you wish without others around all bothering you is the epitome of narcissism. And through this story, you're going to meet Tamara, a young girl showing up through all of this and who came out as a strong woman, not just strong enough to make it through, but strong enough to tell her story. And this is a fresh story too. This is something that happened just earlier this year, and something that she told to me just months after it all happened. I stay ahead of these interviews by several months, so I actually recorded this many months ago. So stick around after the interview. You're going to hear how the podcast is doing, what next month's episode is going to be about. And I've decided I'm going to start giving you some highlights from the Shunned podcast group that I have on Facebook and what's going on there. So without further ado, let's meet Tamara.
My name's Tamara. I'm 27 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right. So then how did you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Were you born in, or did you come in later?
I was born and raised one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Gotcha. How many generations does that go back?
5. Goes back 5 generations.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have deep roots then.
Yes. Yes, I do.
So then I guess, that means, so obviously your parents were born in as well.
No. Actually,
no.
My mom, she was raised in it from the age of 3.
Oh, okay.
And my dad didn't come into it until he was later in his life, around the age of 21.
Oh. So then how did that come about? Do you know the story at all?
Well, with my mom and my grandmother had always been exposed to it, but she didn't get baptized until she was 19. My mom was around 3 at that time.
Gotcha.
And with my dad, his parents started studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, and he was living a life of extreme drugs and alcohol, and he was looking for something more than that. So he started studying with his parents.
Gotcha. I think a lot of times people have issues in life, and then they, kind of find Jehovah's Witnesses and turn to that. You can be just as addicted to a religion or an ideology as you can to drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
It can kind of take over your life. So then, being born and raised a witness yourself, what was the worldview that it gave you as a child growing up?
Well, I lived a very isolated life. I even lived in an isolated community. I was raised in this tiny little town that had one street on it. It was called Main Street.
Oh, wow.
And one end had a grocery store and the other end had a home hardware. And so, the school had like 300 kids, and my congregation at the Kingdom Hall only had 15 people in it.
Wow, that's a book study for most people.
Yeah, exactly. It was tiny. So in the beginning years, I didn't mind, going to school and being different because I got so much attention for it. It was so praised, and it was a good thing. So I didn't start changing my view on how I seen the world until I got, into my preteens and actually realized that I was different.
Gotcha. So then you say that you were praised for it. That's kind of, I guess the opposite of a lot of people's experiences. Why in school were you praised for it? What did people kind of admire then about? I mean, was it that you were just being praised by your family and the witnesses in this small kingdom hall, or were you actually getting praise at school or from your classmates or teachers?
It was definitely a little of both. I was always a strong-minded kid, and I was just like my classmates. There was only a small number of us, and so they were always good to me, and my teachers were always praising me for standing up for myself and being strong-minded and stuff like that. So, and they were always very accommodating because, like every other Jehovah's Witness, you don't stand for the anthem and you don't participate in any of the holiday celebrations, and so they were always extremely accommodating to me.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see too, um, Jehovah's Witnesses give their kids the, I guess, the opportunity to be strong and to take stands for things. I mean, you kind of have to.
Yes.
It's not really so optional, but
Yeah. No.
I guess if you're looking for qualities that the religion can give people, that is, the ability to stand out, to be different. Um, Obviously, again, it's not really necessarily always by choice, but that is a positive. And then, of course, later in life, if a person takes a stand and uses those same qualities against the religion,
Yeah.
it's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Sure, of course. Um, so then, so it sounds like school was pretty good. What was it like at home for you, growing up in the religion?
It was boring. It was very boring. But at the age that I started school, would have been around 5 years old, my dad got very sick with chronic migraines,
Oh,
which rendered him bedridden for the majority of my life at home. So we had that to deal with, and mom had her depression to deal with. So we weren't the family that at that period of time, we weren't always the family that made it to all the meetings or went in service. But my mom followed the rules to the letter.
of course.
So our TV was, I was raised on Little House in the Prairie and animal documentaries. Our music was, old school music. There was never we were never exposed to any swearing or any kind of insinuating material of any kind. It was very strict.
Wow.
So my life revolved around just being at home. School was kind of the only escape from that.
Wow. So it sounds like you were I mean, I can only imagine how isolating that is, to be isolated in a small community and then to even be isolated at school. And then it sounds like at home, I mean, you had very little contact with the outside world. Um,
Very little, yes.
yeah.
Because there were other kids in our hall as well. There was three other kids, but they were a lot younger than me too. So we didn't get out and do things. We were always just at home. Um, the highlight of our year was when our aunts came to visit because they would take us out to a movie or a sleigh ride, whatever time of the year they'd come, they'd plan an adventure for us, and that was our one time to get out and see the world.
And was it just you as far as the children goes, or did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I had a younger sister. She was 4 years younger than me. She just passed last year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That's too young. Um, well, how were you treated then? So I don't really want to just gloss all over, past that, but I know that's part of your story.
Yes.
Um, so how did so you're at home, you're isolated like this. Um, it sounds like, so what about at the Kingdom Hall? It sounds like you said that you weren't super regular,
Yeah.
but in such a small congregation, I would assume that everyone takes on maybe bigger roles when they are there. Um,
Yeah.
how, for you, what did that look like?
Well, after a couple years, we did get regular at the meetings and pretty involved in the congregation. Um, the responsibilities were a lot heavier at that point. I mean, you were given a talk, or I was given a talk at least every second to third week, and then a demonstration for every meeting.
Yeah.
So there was a lot, but there was a lot of disconnect in the congregation too.
Okay.
Nobody really cared.
Really?
Yeah, no.
How
Um,
how can you? That's that's hard to grasp because it's such a small congregation. It's like you would think that everybody cares tremendously because you know they're it.
you would think, but all it did was generate a lot of drama because you're so close to these people
Yeah.
all the time that when they do want to get involved in your life, it's because they want to counsel you on your shoes being too tall or your shirt being too low or your
Wow.
makeup or whatever. It always involved themselves in the things that didn't really matter, and then they didn't pay attention to anything else. Like for an example, my dad didn't go to the meetings at all. He never got out of bed. But every single meeting, at that point we had 3 meetings a week, and every single meeting they'd say, "Oh, your father's not here. He must be sick." Well, yes, he has been for the last 10 years.
Hmm.
Like and every single meeting it was the same thing over and over again. Like nobody paid attention.
That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that you really summed up a lot of what it is to live in the cult, just in the statement that they pay attention to the things that don't really matter, like
Yeah.
your shoes or the length of your dress or whatever. But
Yes, exactly.
yeah, but when it comes to caring about actual human beings, that's not really there because I don't know if it were me and I knew there's this guy that seems to not get out of bed for 10 years and isn't at the meeting, I would be trying to help that guy. you know, find out what's wrong, what can we do to help him? You would think that these loving quote shepherds or whatever would be out there trying to help him or in some way or help you or your mom or your sister because that's just a hard situation.
Well, their way of helping is inviting you in service.
Yes, because that's all that really matters. That fixes
Yes,
everything.
exactly. So that in their heads, that's how they were helping. We'll get the kids out of the house. invite them in service, and that was just the extent of it.
Wow. Wow. And it is interesting that even in such a small congregation, people were still reflective of what you see in the larger congregation. I mean, there's in larger kingdom halls, there are cliques. I guess you couldn't have too many cliques out of 15 people, but
No, but there was quite often division.
yeah, yeah.
Anytime an issue would come up, it would kind of divide in half every time. I was usually the center of the division, but
Well, you were the only, I think, didn't you say that you were pretty much the oldest of the young people?
yes,
So there you
yes,
go. Yeah, you're going to be the center of everyone's attention. You're the next big hope for them is that they can get you to be whatever it is, they're trying to mold you into.
yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. Um how did then how did things kind of well, actually, let's talk about how did you feel? What were your feelings as you were going through all this? You kind of said that in school you kind of felt, I guess, maybe a little praised for things, but otherwise, you said that you're kind of the center of this sometimes negative attention. How were you feeling at home, and how were you feeling at school or at the Kingdom Hall?
Well, when I got into grade 5, 6, that's when my view on everything started to change. So I got curious about what all the other kids were doing, the music they were listening to, the sports they got to play, and I wanted to experience things like all the other kids. But it created a division. I got angry because I couldn't do it, so my family and the congregation viewed me as rebellious. So they see you starting to go one way and they just load the pressure and expectations on you to keep you distracted.
Yeah. So then
And
I'm.
when that didn't work, I got pulled out of school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You say when was this that you got pulled out?
I was halfway through grade 9.
Wow. And
Yeah.
were you? And then I don't know if you want to get into that yet. Is that when did you get baptized? How did that progress as far as, because you're starting to be this quote rebellious kid who just
Yeah.
wants to have a little fun,
Yeah.
harmless fun, and yet, eventually you, I'm sure, did end up getting baptized. How did that go as you went through your teenage years?
Well, I had no choice
Yeah,
to get baptized.
yeah,
How that worked was there was an elder in our congregation at the time, and because it's such a small congregation, you work with the same people every day in service, and so we quite often got left in the car by ourselves while somebody went to do a study. So I'd be stuck in the car for about an hour with this elder, and he would pull out the book and he would ask me the questions and he would drill me on all the questions. So I'd have to answer them. And then at the end of it, he would say, "See, you know all the answers. So when do you want to book the meeting to start going over the questions?" And
wow.
finally, it just got too much. And I said, "Okay, well, we'll do it. When do you want to do it?"
How old were you then?
16.
Wow, that's that's such a hard line way to go about it. I mean, you were truly a captive. I mean, captive in a car, getting grilled by an elder. There's not much you can do to get away from that.
No, you're stuck.
Yeah, that's. So, did you feel? I don't know. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. I think I might have felt not only lonely but just trapped. Maybe even
I felt,
literally in a car.
and I've always been a pleaser.
Yeah,
I always wanted to make people happy.
yeah,
So when people put expectations on me, it was a lot of pressure because I just wanted to make them happy. So that was the majority of my life in the Kingdom Hall, is just meeting expectations all the time.
yeah. You're almost like a little performer. Um,
Yes.
here's your stage, here's your role. Now go do it. That's your life.
Yeah.
Um, so when you were taken out of school, I would imagine that must have been a huge change for you because that was your one escape. That was your one outlet.
Yeah.
Um,
It was. The kids at school, they would bring me a change of clothes every day for so when I got to school I could wear more modern things like everybody else. So I didn't stick out as different so much, and they would bring me magazines so I could, keep up on the celebrity drama like everybody else. And so they did that for me, and I was told that they were going to die, and they're influenced by Satan, and I truly believed that they were good people. They were good people. I still talk to them. They were friendships that lasted, up until now, and you get stuck in the middle.
yeah, I mean that's honestly a really sweet and beautiful thing that those kids were doing. I
Yeah.
mean that's really that's amazing. I mean, usually kids see another kid who's different and they seize upon that opportunity
Yeah.
to bully them or whatever to make themselves feel better. But here, these kids were actually trying to help you. Um,
Yes.
that's wow. I've never heard that. That's an amazing piece of the story. Um,
Yeah, I
so
was lucky to have that,
yeah,
but it got taken away once my parents found out.
yeah. So then you said that was in like the ninth grade.
Yeah,
Uh,
halfway through grade 9.
So how old are you then? Like 14ish, I guess,
Yeah,
something like
around
that.
14. Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, so then you start this homeschool program. Can you tell us
Mhm.
anything about the type of homeschool that you did?
This type of homeschooling should not be allowed, but it was called New System School. So, in order to get enrolled in this program, you have to have letters signed by elders stating that you are an active part of the congregation before you can even get the curriculum.
Wow.
And then once you get it, um, your your health class is the Young People Ask book. Your history class is either the Proclaimer's book or the Revelation book. Your science class is the Evolution book. It goes on and on
Oh, I
to
think you mean the creation book.
yes.
I'm just teasing because, of course, it's not really about evolution.
No.
Wow, that would give a person a very distorted outlook of the world if that's all that they read.
Yeah. And so the only class that didn't involve um, the publications that were given was our math class. That was it.
And
Uh,
is that just basically probably like a remedial math? I would assume that it's not
yeah,
a higher
how to
math of any sort.
X and multiplication and
Yeah, yeah, just
just
basics.
basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really surprised that that is legal.
Yeah,
That
me too.
meets criteria.
Yeah.
I wonder. I kind of wonder how they get around that. But
I don't know.
because I
It's
know,
pretty intense. It's
yeah,
it's pretty intense because your service time counts for credits, and your meeting times spent at the meetings and your meeting preparation count for credits as well. So your life is a Jehovah's Witness bubble.
wow,
That's
that's
all you're exposed to. That's
yeah.
all you learn about. That's all you study. That's all you live.
I would imagine that you must have felt pretty desperate to get away from it at times because that's just a lot of Jehovah's Witness indoctrination. That's just a lot.
It's a lot. But after 2 years of that, I just gave in to it.
Yeah, yeah, I can
My only
understand.
way out was to progress into the things that you're allowed to, like pioneering and foreign language, and that is the path I took.
So then, did you did you just pioneer, or did you actually learn a foreign language? Is that an
Yes, I
option there?
did. I regular pioneered and went to pioneer school. After that, I joined the Chinese congregation. At the same time, I was part of the sign language and Spanish courses as well.
You were a young go getter.
Yeah, but it was the only thing that I was allowed to excel at. It
Sure.
was the only thing I was allowed to, that allowed me to move forward in any direction.
Did you did you have to move away? I don't know, I'm just picturing this little Main Street town. Like, where
Yeah,
were the people with these foreign languages to, did you have to move away?
yes, I did. I traveled back and forth for a while to Halifax, and then I just moved to Halifax.
Okay, and how far away did that get you from, where you had grown up?
About an hour and a half.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. A little breathing room, at least, a buffer zone.
Yes, but that was the beginning of my way out.
Yeah.
Because I was working at home too, so I was homeschooled and pioneering, and I managed a call center from home at night.
A little workaholic, really. That's
Yeah,
a lot on your plate.
it was, but it didn't allow me out of the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get to work outside of the home, or
Were these was this call center, was it somehow witnesses?
it was mostly, most of the workers were witnesses.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of the workers were witnesses.
Wow. And so I guess they all worked from home and maybe had contracts to do like
Yes,
phone customer service representation or something like that.
yes.
Wow. I did not know that existed. That's a new one on me. Interesting. I can see the need for it. I can see why they would like that, that type of work.
Yeah.
So then, how did things, go from there?
Well, I was a small town girl that moved to Halifax, which was like the big city to me. And that was the beginning of my way out at that point. I met people in the congregation that, were on their way out too, and I just got involved with them, and I wanted to see the world and experience things, and so I did it. I
So,
did it.
yeah, you kind of like saw a crack in
Yeah,
the wall,
exactly.
and
And I went for it. Let me out.
yeah, you were in that prison cell, and there was a crack, and you were using a spoon to dig it out so you could get
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
So how did that play out then? That's a pretty big event in your life. How were you influenced to do that, or how did that work? Who were these people, and how did it work out for you?
Well, it was
How did you even find these people? How did you even? It's hard to know how far to push it even on your own. And then, did you just see people who were kind of on the fringe and kind of follow them?
actually it was an accident. Actually, it was kind of a traumatic experience. It was an accident. But I had gotten a roommate at that point, another young girl in the congregation, and she liked this young man in the hall, and so of course the rules are you never go there by yourself. He invited her over for a movie night, so she brought me along, and he ended up drugging our drinks, and pretty much rendered us unconscious, and we woke up with cigar burns on parts of our bodies that we should not have had them. And so what we did was we kept quiet for a little while about it. but then we found out that it was happening to other girls in other congregations by the same person. So we took pictures. The burns were bad enough. We ended up in the hospital, and so we had taken pictures, very discreet pictures, and we went for an elders meeting, and they told us that the pictures weren't enough evidence. It could be anybody. So they needed us to, show them the physical evidence, which neither one of us
Oh
would
my
do.
God.
And so nothing was done. He was promptly flown out to live in. I think he went to Las Vegas. Actually, his family flown him to Las Vegas, and he's never come back.
So they
But
literally had, Jehovah's Witnesses like to go by this two witness rule where there has to be two witnesses to any of these types of events to
yes,
give them any validity.
right,
They literally have two witnesses
yes,
and photographic evidence,
yes,
and they just kind of tell you to piss off.
yeah,
That is horrifying.
yeah. It was awful.
I am so sorry that you had to go through that. That is sickening. It's not only violating enough what this monster did, but then to sit in a room full of three monsters
Yes,
who,
yeah, it was definitely, and it was a touchy subject.
yeah,
And so you have someone saying, "Well, just show us what he did." Well, we can't. Like, we're not going to do that for you. Like, here's the pictures.
yeah, and that the fact that they would even ask you to do
Mm-hmm.
that, that is
Yep.
quite frankly rather predatory behavior itself. That's horrific. My mind is blown. That is awful. I know, I hear stories, but I've never, I don't think I've ever had them ask you to, show that kind of evidence.
Yeah.
That might be a new one on me. I'm sure there's somebody who's going to listen who's like, oh yeah, that happens all the time, and probably knows a lot of examples, and they call themselves Jehovah's Organization, and
Mm-hmm.
that they're directed by God. That's horrifying. So then how did you go on from that? I mean, that's where did that take you, after something like that?
Well, very shortly after that happened, we had another friend, a very close friend, and he was quite obviously gay, um, but he had never acted on it. But it was bothering him. Of course, the rules are, if something is wrong, then you go to the elders and tell the elders, and they'll help you. So he went to the elders and told them that, he believed that he was gay. He hadn't acted on it, but, this is who he was. And they immediately disfellowshipped him.
Really?
Yeah.
Just for the thought and not the action.
Yes. The elders in the congregation at that time didn't understand. There were, after that had happened, he wasn't reinstated, but there were a lot of elders meetings on teaching them how to better deal with those situations.
But it didn't help him any.
It didn't help
Oh,
him
of course
any, and
not.
so he tried to commit suicide
Oh,
after
God.
he was disfellowshipped. And so we found him, and we took him in, and he lived with us. But he was disfellowshipped, so we got disfellowshipped too.
Wow. So
Because we weren't going to back down. At that point, we had already been, nobody was there to help us. We were, pretty much slapped in the face with our elders meeting, not long before that. And then this young man was treated so unfairly that we just put our foot down and we're like, no.
yeah.
No.
So, the guy who's drugging and raping women he's all right.
Yeah.
That we're going to let him roam free in the organization. The
Yep.
guy that has homosexual thoughts, we're going to disfellowship him. And then the two girls who were violated by this first guy, who are kind hearted, sweet, gentle people, and take in this guy who has tried to commit suicide to help him. These these shepherds end up undermining your efforts and disfellowshipping you, so you'll be shunned too. And then all the while, it's really you all were the shepherds. You all were the ones who were caring for someone or something. It's really, when you get to the core of what the organization is and the power that is wielded by these men in these positions, it's really frightening, and it's really just a disgusting display of what humans can do when they're given too much power.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I am sorry that that's the way it went for everyone involved there. That's just terrible. So, may I ask whatever happened to this guy, if you can say? I mean, I know it's not his story, but
Yeah. I believe that he did get reinstated. If I'm correct, it happened a couple of times. Um, he suffered from some mental illness, and his family was everything. He was very, very close with his family. It was everything to him. So when he lost it, he couldn't deal with it.
sure.
So he keeps going back.
Yeah.
He keeps going back.
Yeah, I imagine that much of that mental illness is brought on by the fact that he's being so inauthentic. He's not, if he's gay, then great, be that,
Yeah.
but he's trying to suppress who he is, and he's trying to be somebody he's not,
Yeah.
just to keep family, and that will cause mental illness.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, back to you, and I guess this there was this other girl as well. How did life progress for you all, from there?
Um, well, I haven't been in contact with her since then. Though I have creeped her Facebook, and she had been dating somebody during that time, and they've gotten married, and her life looks good. She's living a good life the
Is
way
she
that she wanted to.
is she still a witness, do you think? Or
No, she's
oh,
not.
good
No,
for her.
I went to her parents at an assembly a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and
Well, I'm glad she found freedom and an authentic life.
yeah.
So then that leaves you. So where did you go from there?
I got disfellowshipped, and my parents gave me, I believe it was something like a week to find a place to live. And I answered a newspaper article. Somebody had posted that they were looking for a roommate. I ended up in a very bad situation. It turned out to be a crack house. So I I have no outside world experience
Wow.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm dealing with. So I took off. I grabbed a bus, and I ended up in Halifax. Back in Halifax is the first bus that was leaving. That's where it took me. And I called my dad at that point, and I told him, I'm sitting in front of McDonald's. That's where I am. I'd slept on the sidewalk beside McDonald's for a couple of days because they gave out free coffee in the mornings. So I called him, and I'm crying, and I tell him, where I am and what's happened. And I said, I need to come home. I need somewhere safe to sleep. I need to get back on my feet. I'll do anything. At this point I'm begging, I'll go to all the meetings, and I'll do it all. And his response to me was, you can't come home until the elders tell me that you can come home, so you need to call them. And he gave me a list of phone numbers.
Wow.
So I called them, and I'm like, you have to tell him that I can come home. I'll go to the meetings, I'll do whatever. And they said, no, you're just in a desperate situation and you're just saying what you need to. You're not really sorry. I'm like, yes, obviously I'm in a desperate
Yeah.
situation. Let me go home. But no, that didn't work.
Was your dad an elder?
Yes.
Oh, so he was worried
He
about
had
his position.
better. He had gotten better at that point, just as I had gotten disfellowshipped. My dad had about 4 years, well, where he um, had a break from his migraines. So he quickly became an elder and pioneered and got extremely faithful. So he left me there.
Gotcha. It's just really hard to hear the. I mean, I'm sure it's even harder to live the abandonment. Uh, you know, by these people that you think are your loved ones, are supposed shepherds in the congregation who are supposed to love you and care for you, and it's just time after time when you've needed any of these people, they just abandon you, and that's horrifying. So you're, I guess at this point, you're, where does that leave you? You're just homeless in Halifax, at McDonald's.
Yep.
Is that it?
Well, I found a boyfriend, I guess. I found a guy that I liked, and he immediately offered for me to move in with him. Um, Not a smart idea, but that's what I did, and
Sure.
he's the father of my children, and I stayed with him for a number of years.
And what was that like? I mean, you said it was not a smart idea. Was it a bad relationship or?
Mm. Yeah, I was in it. It was an extremely abusive relationship. Um, but I was the way the Jehovah's Witnesses raise you is you make it work. You figure
Of
out how to make it work. You just
course.
don't give up on relationships. You fix it.
Yeah.
So I tried to fix it,
Sure.
and it didn't work.
Yeah. They teach you. They give these examples, many of which are probably fake, of people winning their spouse over without a word through their conduct, their fine conduct, especially as a woman.
Yes.
That's how it's portrayed. Essentially, if your husband's beating you, just be a fine example of a Christian Jehovah's Witness wife, and magically, 20 years later, he might change. It's really such a bleak outlook, and I think that a point you made kind of touches on just the fact Jehovah's Witnesses teach you just kind of to grin and bear it, and I think that that's what you were doing your whole life, and what most of us probably did as young witnesses. We didn't have a choice. We were just grinning and bearing it. We were doing what was expected of us,
Yeah.
and doing what we could to survive. So that pattern just plays out.
There was a period of time where, of course, I missed my family. So this man that I was with, he started studying, and we went to the meetings, just so that, because when they see me making an effort, they would have minimal amount of contact with me.
Hmm.
Of course, the contact was usually just to lecture me on how I could be a better housewife, but it was still contact.
Yeah.
And I mean, it didn't last very long. It lasted a couple of months, but um, we did do that for a little while. And of course, then everybody had hope, I was gonna convert him, and everything was gonna be great, and they were gonna help fix him, and because they knew what was happening in the home, but Jehovah was going to fix that.
And once again, it's not like they were going to call an outside organization and say come help this person or her children who are living in an abusive environment.
Yeah.
Um, you know, at,
Yeah.
at every at every chance Jehovah's Witnesses have, they fail to actually help a human being.
Yeah.
It's so mind blowing how
Yeah.
they do that. Um,
Well,
so
this was all before I had the girls too. I
okay.
left him I left him just a couple months after I had my first daughter,
Oh, okay. All right.
and I got reinstated at that point.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So what was that process like, as far as going through the reinstatement process? Did you just you know tell them you were sorry like the prodigal son and they accepted you back immediately?
Yeah, you fake it till you make it.
Right.
Well, I had I had a baby girl, and I was pregnant with another one, and I had left this man, and he was the only person I had in my life. When I didn't have my family, I had him, and that was it. There was nobody else. He didn't allow me to leave that bubble either.
Yeah.
So when I left him, there was nobody, and I was like, well, I need my family. So I went to my doctor, and my doctor's like, well, what do you need? What do you need me to do? And I said, I need my family. So he actually wrote a prescription to the elders stating that I needed family contact for my mental health.
Wow.
He did do that for me.
Good for him.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
That's cool.
And it worked.
Wow, really?
It
They did
worked.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't go out and go out for supper with my family and whatnot, but my mom could come over and help me out and stuff like that. So the reinstatement process was really just faking it. I sent in my letter for reinstatement after 3 months and did the interview that they do, where they ask you a million questions that they don't need to.
Right.
Like, I suffered from a serious drug addiction during those years, and
Was
so
this
they
during the years where you were with this man or during the years after him?
yeah, no, the years I was with him.
Okay.
And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, I got clean at that point.
So then you were kind of escaping, probably through that.
Yeah, it was just you didn't think about it. You were just numb.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you've been trapped your whole life.
Yeah.
You do anything you can to get out. So
So they ask you questions like, what drugs did you do and how much of it did you do? Well, I don't know. I just took whatever was available. Like, how many partners did you have, and just all these questions that just make no sense. And so I just kept telling them, like, I don't know the answers to your questions. There's no answer.
yeah, it's not like you were keeping a log.
No.
Just in case the elders need this later, I'm going to keep a log
Yeah.
of everything that I do so that they can have complete control over me later.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess they were satisfied enough with the efforts that I had made in the 3 month period. And they said they would reinstate me, but they lost my records. So it took an additional 3 months to reinstate me.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they really lost your records.
I know.
Because I've
I
never
was
heard of
thinking
anybody
the
getting.
same thing.
What's that?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody getting reinstated after just 3 months. I mean, usually it's a minimum 6-month process.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get in before I had the baby,
Huh.
so that my family could help me out.
Oh.
Um, actually, one of the elders meetings I was in labor for the elders meeting.
What?
One of the last ones I had. I
Wow.
had to go while I was in labor. I delivered a baby about 3 hours after that elders meeting.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I was like, you better reinstate me because this is some serious effort
That's
right here.
I can only imagine the stress that you were under too.
Yeah, that's
Just
probably what induced it,
yeah,
really.
yeah, no, yeah, that could absolutely be. And so when did you get reinstated? Was it after the baby was born?
Yes, just after.
Hmm.
Yeah, after the elders meeting, my dad drove me to the hospital, dropped me off at the doors, and said, "Have a nice night. I'll see you in the morning." And I went in there by myself.
They
The nurses felt really bad for me too.
well, yes, I do too. That's horrible. I mean, they're so inhuman. Um
It's
it
awful.
Yeah, it makes me think of oh, I'm blanking. Was it DJ? Somebody that I interviewed who wanted to get reinstated essentially because he had a friend who his best friend was getting married, and of course, I don't think that worked out. It's like they know that there's some event coming up, and
Yeah.
somehow you never quite get reinstated in time.
No. No.
Ever. No. They have to punish you that one last time. They have to stick it to
Yeah.
you in some way so that they can get their power trip.
Yeah.
Um, well, so then you're you give birth to your second child.
Hmm.
Um, you said you were reinstated not long after that.
Yeah,
So
maybe a month, couple of
okay.
weeks.
So then where did that take you in life after that? Where'd you go?
I was reinstated probably a period of 2 months before I left again. Um, Directly after my reinstatement, which wasn't that long ago, my mom and sister were diagnosed in the same week with two different very aggressive cancers. Um, so they needed to move to be closer to their treatments. And I didn't have a car. Um, doesn't even sell diapers. Like, we're a small community here. So I needed to move somewhere where I'd have help, and I couldn't move to with them because that's where my children's father lives, and um, he doesn't know where I am.
Okay.
I couldn't risk him finding out.
Sure.
So my family moved to, and I moved um, about 45 minutes away from them.
All right. And so then you move into this new place.
Yeah, and I stopped going to meetings and I stopped everything.
Gotcha. So you were kind of fading or trying
This is
to.
my chance to get out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was my chance.
Sure. So then how did things progress with the fade or with your family? I mean, it just seems like the hits just keep coming. Now your sister and your mom are diagnosed with cancer. How did all this progress? I mean, your search for freedom in this new place, and then yet you have this family that you love that is going through these hard times.
They were too distracted to be too bothered by my change in my choice on how to raise my children and live my life.
And what was that? What was that change, or what was, what if they were paying attention? I mean, what were you? What was the change? What were you doing differently? In this new place.
Well, I severed all contact with any Jehovah's Witnesses, um, and I started looking into childcare. I wanted to get a job and go to school. Um, I got in trouble with that with my father a little later on after things settled. Um, but I started celebrating holidays for the first time. This has been my first year actually really celebrating any holidays. And
Awesome. Congratulations.
yeah, it's been exciting. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only thing they realized or noticed was that I wasn't going to the meetings, but they were so distracted with what was going on that they just let it go for a little while until things got to the end for them with the hospital stays and stuff. That's when I was obviously um, pretty disconnected from the family, and they kind of put their foot down with me. They tolerated
How'd they
it
do
for a
that?
little while, but
They so well. First of all, I have to go back to something that's sticking in my mind. So your dad
yeah.
got on you later on for for wanting to go to school and get a job and such. Like, how were you supposed to support these kids? I mean, what else were you supposed to do? Uh, what was
I'm
the
supposed
alternative?
I'm supposed to go to the meetings and find a brother
Uh,
to support me.
okay. All right.
That
Yeah.
that's what I'm supposed to do.
Well, I mean, that's not immediate. You have to support yourself somehow. I mean, you got to eat. That's
I know,
they just
but
have such an unrealistic view of life.
yeah.
So then you said, getting back to your family, you said that they kind of shut you out or whatever. I mean, what
Yeah.
did they, kind of see your fate and start shunning you, or did they just uh, limit contact, or what happened? Because I mean, you weren't disfellowshipped.
Yeah, it was a little um with mom, it was obvious. My dad, when I was in the hospital with my sister, let's start there, it's easier.
Okay.
Um, with my sister, she was the first to pass. She passed last May. Um, so I stayed at the hospital with her. And nobody offered me a drive. I lived an hour away. Nobody asked me where the kids were, if I needed help with the kids. When it came to nighttime, nobody offered me a bed to sleep in at the hospital. I had to find somewhere else to go. Um, and pretty much look after myself.
And again,
And
you're not disfellowshipped.
no, but
I
I'm
mean,
work.
not that even being disfellowshipped is an excuse for that type of behavior and treatment of another human being, especially in such a time of grief and concern. There
Yeah.
is no excuse for that. But even Jehovah's Witnesses who might do that if someone was disfellowshipped, you're not disfellowshipped, and they are using your new life or whatever to treat you so badly in this time.
One of my older friends, she was one of the girls in our congregation that I grew up with. She's a few years younger than me. And she lived close to the hospital, so she offered for me to be able to stay with her since nobody would let me stay at the hospital.
Okay.
And so after a night, her family convinced her that, I was worldly and I got kicked out on the street in the middle of the night. I believe it was around 11:30 at night.
They just threw you out.
They just threw me out.
And where were your kids during all this?
Joel, actually, my cousin,
Oh, your
he had
cousin.
them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, my cousin had them, and we're taking care of them for the week that I was there. Um, I had to call, I didn't really know this person really well at this point. I had met her a couple of times, and I called her up in the middle of the night and I told her what had happened, and she said, "Give me 15 minutes and you're going to stay with me." And I hadn't eaten. Nobody was offering me any food. I had no money. she took me out and, got me a hot meal and took me in for the last couple of days of all of that.
Well, good for her for being a
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
So then this was, I mean, you said the last couple of days, was this the wind down of your sister's battle with cancer?
Yes. Yes. She stayed there until she passed. There was an overwhelming amount of people. I have never witnessed such a level of disrespect in my life as was demonstrated by all those Jehovah's Witnesses at the time. We were on the palliative care unit. So there's like a kitchen and there's 2 family rooms and there's about 10 other rooms with people and their families that they're passing. And when my sister was up there, there was at least 30 to 40 people at any given time. They took over the whole floor. All the other families had nowhere to sit. They had nowhere to put their food in the kitchen. There's just kids running everywhere, just this mass amount of noise and kingdom melodies being sung all of the time.
Oh my gosh.
It was, and of course, I'm the worldly one, and my aunt who was there with me, she wasn't an active witness either. So we spent the majority of our time, down the hallway.
They're so, Jehovah's Witnesses are so tone deaf
Yeah.
to other human beings, to social
Yeah.
norms. They're so narcissistic. They just
Yeah.
they can't fathom that other people wouldn't like them taking over a whole floor and singing Jehovah's praises through kingdom songs, while other human beings are dying with their family trying to, have their last moments their way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
It was a sad thing to be witness to. I spent a good majority of my time apologizing to their families,
yeah.
because I'm, finding a little corner to sit in down the hallway because there's no room for me either. And, I'm just, this is my sister that's in there, and I feel like I need to apologize for them for this.
Yeah. No, I understand. Just as an aside, I remember when I was a witness, for a lot of my life, we didn't have to travel to conventions because they were held in our city. But at a point, we started having to travel, and I actually stopped staying at any of the approved hotels that were on the list because I couldn't stand the behavior of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
At the hotels, I was so sickened by it that I would just go get my own hotel somewhere else and not be around any of them. They have no idea, how they pump themselves up in their assemblies and conventions as to how, how everyone wishes basically they could be like the witnesses in their behavior, but it's not true. It's completely fabricated. Their behavior is deplorable. So yeah, I can only imagine, here I am, talking about my experience at a convention. I can only imagine. I'm just so sorry that you in this time have to apologize for the behavior of these people during such a serious and, one-time moment.
And everybody's there because they're nosy.
Of course, they're yes.
They're just nosy.
It's the place to
They're
be.
all sitting around joking
Yes.
and laughing, and it's happy-go-lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so respectful.
It is. It is. And they have to put on the facade that, look, Jehovah's people are so happy, even in the face of such tragedy, because, we have this hope. And please tell me that they weren't preaching to the other people who were there.
No, not that I noticed.
Okay.
No,
I can just, I mean, they're just so tone deaf. I mean, I know that they look up like death certificate, like they'll see like obituaries and then they'll send
Yeah,
people stuff. It's just so horrifying.
yeah.
I just hope that they weren't doing anything like that there in the palliative care unit. I mean, oh, I'm so sorry that it
I
puts you
mean,
in
they
such a
left
position.
magazines in just about every family room and
Of
kitchen,
course they
but
did. Of course they did. God, they're so dumb. Oh, well. So then, how did things go? I mean, obviously, we know how the story ends.
yes.
For your sister, but how does that transpire? How were it seems like you weren't treated very well leading up to it. How were you treated as that was going down, or as afterward? How did they treat you?
It's so fake. Like after my sister passed, they cared for all about 15 minutes. And maybe not even that. Um I went in to say goodbye to my sister because it was time, the nurses said, but I didn't make it back down the hallway in time. So she had passed by the time I walked into the room. So I was in shock. And
Oh.
I come out of the room and I just kind of laid down on the floor. I just couldn't breathe. And so everybody is pulling on me. I'm not the type of person that likes to be touched. I don't do physical contact. And they're all choking me. They're pulling on my clothes and, are you okay? They're asking me over and over again. And I reach up through this crowd of people and I grab onto my aunt's hand, and that's when she knew it was time to step in. My aunt is the most easygoing person you will ever meet in your life. Just go with the flow, quiet, chilled out person. And she went into full on Hulk mode. There was witnesses flying every direction down the hallway, and and then they didn't care. I never heard from another one again.
Ever?
Not a message, not a visit, not a phone call, not nothing.
Did
There was
they?
no.
Did you see them at the like memorial or whatever?
I didn't. I had completely stopped everything. Um, about 2 months before she passed. So I never was in a situation to encounter them again. The elders up until that point were trying to call on me and visit me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I never seen or heard of them again after my sister
Oh, and when
passed.
I said memorial, I didn't mean the memorial that they
Oh,
celebrated Jesus' death. I'm
oh,
sorry. I meant the
uh,
memorial of your sister.
oh my goodness, that was wild. Yeah, I seen them um at the service. I waited outside until just before it started, and there was zero emotional connection whatsoever. I mean, they use the service not to remember the person,
Mm-hmm.
but to recruit people.
Yeah, it's a sales pitch.
Oh, it was the big recruitment meeting.
Right.
So and everybody was high as kites, self-medicated on whatever. It was a mess. All the witnesses were high on their prescriptions and just making a scene. It was
There is a lot of prescription abuse.
oh, it was a scene.
So, I mean, what kind of scene? What were they just?
Well, but besides the over dramatic grieving,
Okay.
very loud, and they're walking around talking to people, and they're just. I remember one lady came up to my aunt, and she's so high, and she's like touching her hair, and she's like, "Oh, your hair is so soft," and like she's walking around doing this to everybody,
What?
like so high, and we couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Oh my. So you did at least. Okay. So it was not what you would have wanted,
No.
but you at least got to say goodbye, I guess, in
Yes,
some way.
and I did get to attend my sister's burial.
Okay.
I got cut off more with mom as things progressed with me. Um, I was cut off a lot more. With my sister, I did have a little more leeway.
Okay. All right. And so then how did how long after, so you're because your mom and your sister were diagnosed at roughly the same time, correct?
Yeah, they were diagnosed just 3 days apart.
Okay. And so then how did things transpire
Mm,
after this went down with your
yeah.
sister?
Well, my sister passed in May, and my mom passed in January.
And this
The end
was of
of
what
January.
year?
Last year,
So,
May of last year.
May of last year and then January of this year?
Yes,
Wow, this is so fresh.
yes.
Okay.
Um, so after my sister passed, my mom went into the same depression she did when we were kids. That just living for paradise spiral. She lived on repeat again. When dad was sick, my mom every day would say, we just have to make it to tomorrow because the paradise might be here tomorrow.
Right.
And that's how she lived her life. That's how we all lived it. And so when my sister passed, she went back to that again, where she just didn't care about anything else on the outside world. You just have to make it to tomorrow because the paradise will be here.
And I'm sure
So
she was hoping that for herself as well, with her
yeah,
cancer and everything. Yeah.
yeah. But then there was a lot of pressure on me. Of course, when my sister was passing and I went in to see her the last day, she grabs my hand and she says, promise me you'll be in the new system, promise me you'll be there too.
Mm.
Of course, because she knows that
Yeah.
am not participating. So mom grabbed onto that, and there was quite a bit of pressure for a little while until she got distracted again. I seen the elders at one point after that. After my sister passed, I made some friends in the community here, which was big for me. I'd never had friends before, and after she passed, I mean, I hadn't paid my bills, I hadn't done my taxes, I just dropped everything. I didn't do any of the things they needed to. So one friend stopped in and helped me get that done, and another friend showed up with a carload full of groceries and to help me out. And while they are here, the elders knock on my door, and not to ask me if I'm okay or if I need anything, but to simply ask me if they aren't able to reach me on my cell phone, how else could they get a hold of me if there was ever, a natural disaster or something? Where would I go, and what phone numbers could they use to track me down? I
Okay.
simply told them that this was not the time and shut it down. But
Yeah.
and that's when I really realized that I had made the right decision.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a house with people who
For help?
actually care about you for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah, who truly care.
Yes.
Yeah, I know I've had many of those moments since leaving as well. The stuff we were told about the people on the outside is just not necessarily true at all. And I mean, it's amazing to see the difference in what real love looks like and the conditional, fake for appearance love that we grew up with.
Yeah.
So then, how did things go from there? I mean, you've got these friends who are helping you now,
Mhm.
but your mom is still sick and
Yeah.
probably expecting you to, um, be this witness.
Yeah. They were distracted.
Okay.
They got extremely faithful because, and I never wanted to take that away from them, because this hope of paradise is what got them through. It's
Yeah.
what made mom not scared. It
Yeah.
made her okay.
Sure.
So that's one good thing of it. I didn't share that hope or belief, but it made her okay.
Yeah.
Um, but they got so distracted in their own life, and they they were tired of seeing the decisions that I was making. So, they would come and visit the kids sometimes, or we would talk a little bit, but they knew what was going on, so they didn't ask questions. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about. It was a tricky situation. I think mostly the elders, maybe they left me alone because they didn't want to disfellowship me while my mom was still alive.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Because it was obvious, people accidentally tag you in things on Facebook, so
Yeah, it's
thank
hard to hide it all.
birthday party is all over Facebook.
Yeah.
Somebody untag me quick. But, um, so they seen what was going on. Dad didn't really put his foot down with me until mom was in the hospital. And when my sister passed, I had decided, I had so much regret for not standing up for my right to be part of the family.
Yeah.
This is my sister. This is my time to grieve. I have rights. And I didn't stand up for them. I let them all be taken away.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of regret over that. I should have just stood up and told people to go home. But I didn't. And because I felt, small, like I had, my life choice maybe less than, I guess, I viewed myself at that point.
Well, and I mean, they make you feel small your whole life.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to even follow. Don't follow your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding.
Yeah.
It's a group think type thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
you had no chance.
And when there's 35 and 40 of them and just one of me,
Yeah.
I didn't stand up for
Yeah,
myself.
and you knew that so had you have stood up and told them to, let's say you did tell them to leave. I mean, your sister and your mom and your dad would have disagreed with you. So,
Yep.
You were voiceless and powerless in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during that time, I got more determined and more confident in my choices, and I told myself that not this time.
Yeah.
Not this time will I get just walked over. This is my right now. I'm going to stand up for myself, and I did real good for about 3 days. The treatment was even worse this time. Dad didn't allow so many people to be there, so there was a group of about 8 people. And they all brought in food and ate it in front of you, and you weren't allowed to eat any of it. And when the doctors came out they would take me aside and give me updates, because I was a little more emotionally stable at that point for them to give me more information.
Sure.
They came to me quite a bit. So I would come out to update people, and they would put their hand up and say, "No, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak to you. I'll wait for your father to update us."
What?
Yeah. I was traveling back and forth every day on the bus on Metro Transit because I had to come back to look after my girls, because my cousin, they had a job to work in the morning, so somebody had to be with the kids in the early morning hours. And then when they got back, I'd catch the bus back in. Of course, nobody's going to offer to pick you up from the bus station,
Sure,
and nobody's going to offer to, where your kids, and nobody cared. Of course, there was no bed yet again for me to sleep in, so my aunts, they kindly arranged for me to stay in a hotel. Because I stayed 2 nighs. I didn't have to travel back, so they put me up because nobody would give me a bed to sleep in at the hospital. So, and because I was talking to the doctors, like when I would see them come out, I would go and find them and say, okay, update me. And so they started reading me scriptures about being obedient to your parents because they felt I was overstepping my father and not letting him take the lead.
How did you not stab everyone?
I
mean, that's...
My eyes did.
Yeah, shooting daggers. Oh my God.
Are you serious?
It's
going for a coffee.
So insane.
Yeah, it was bad. And nobody would let me be in the room alone with Mom. So somebody would always follow me in. Nobody would leave me alone with her.
What were you going to do? Like convince her to leave, quote, the truth at the very end or something? I mean, they're so weak. Wow.
I don't know, but no, they wouldn't. One of the regular pioneers actually that was there that wouldn't leave because she self-entitled herself as my mother's best friend, which my mom told me everything. I knew that wasn't true, but he wrote my mother a song. Like when my mom went into the hospital, because it was her wish to be medicated and unaware of what was going on, she was in a state of unconscious for the whole time.
Okay.
But this regular pioneer sister wrote her a song, and she can't sing, and she also is not musically inclined, but she wrote my mom a song. Can you guess what song she wrote it to? I think she stripped the lyrics and put her own lyrics on this song.
Oh, I have no idea.
She used the national anthem.
What?
I'm not lying.
And this is the Canadian national anthem, correct?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Oh Canada.
Yes.
She
stripped the word and wrote my mom a song.
They're crazy.
They're crazy. I've never experienced anything. So I'm obviously at this point, upset with how I'm being treated. I'm left.
Well, yeah.
I can't be alone with Mom, and then I'm left to sit in a room by myself until it's time to go home. It's just, and people are reading me scriptures, and so my dad obviously sees my irritation, and so he takes me aside. And he says, "What's your problem?" Ugh. So I tell him, I'm fed up with this. People are blatantly, disrespecting me in this situation. And I go on to explain the things that have been said and done. And he just looked me right in the face and he said, "You know that you're treated this way because you are worldly. And if I was asked to ask anybody to go home, it would be you." And I just broke down. And that's when I gave up my fight to stand up for my rights. For that split second, I gave up.
Well, sure. What were you fighting for at that point?
I was fighting, I promised myself that I was going to stand up and be strong and stick up for myself.
Yeah.
And I did that with mom up until that point. Go ahead and read me your scriptures, but I'm not, I didn't stand down. If I want to go in and see my mom when I want to see my mom, I'm going to do it. And I fought for my rights.
Sure.
And when my dad said that, I gave up.
Well, of course. I mean, what's left?
Nothing. There was nothing. There was nothing left.
Yeah, he just took the air out of the room. There's what are you gonna take in?
Yeah.
In a vacuum. As God.
Yeah, it broke me. That one sentence, and I couldn't wrap my brain around it to justify this level of cruelty, because I've been labeled as worldly. Just maybe in your eyes I am, but I'm still her daughter. I'm still her child.
And you're still his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. That's just
no.
They're just it's just mind blowing how the basic humanity, even animals, talk about you talk about being like a mama bear or something like that. Ladies will talk about that. But and certainly there are animals who eat their young, so I guess you can't say all animals are great parents. I'm not going to anthropomorphize them, but certainly, yeah, you expect more from human parents.
Yeah,
and you have a right to expect more.
Yeah, that level of I didn't see it coming. I didn't, if you don't want to really talk to me, that's okay, but to just tell me to go home.
Yeah, it's just dehumanizing. It's just.
Yeah. And then mom passed away the next night.
Now, were you there for that, or had you just that when you say you gave up, you just left?
I went home and I turned my phone off. I turned my phone off, and because the doctor said that they would call me if I needed to come during the night. And of course, my cousin, if I woke them up at 2:00 in the morning and said, take me in, I mean, they would have done it.
Sure.
But I went home and turned my phone off, and
I can't say I blame you. I mean that.
So my dad decided to talk to me after that. He called me the next morning after mom passed, and he said, come and get her stuff or I'm going to give it away. And of course,
wait a minute. How long after?
At the door with their hands out, right?
Yeah. So how long was after was this?
I don't know, 16 hours.
And he's ready to get rid of all her stuff, and the witnesses are there with their hands out.
That's what happened with my sister. When she passed, her husband was ready the next morning. We packed up her stuff and we brought it all back to my house. Every bit of it. I mean, and after mom passed, I mean, I'm dealing with people's toothbrushes and underwear. They packed it all up and put it in my living room. They can treat me this way, but when they need me, Tamara's the strong one, and Tamara gets stuff done, and we'll just give it to her. So he called me up the next morning and said, come get it. So I drove in there and packed it all up and brought it here. I didn't live here. I stayed with my cousin for a week because there was no room for me to live here until I could get it, stored away and
sorted and all that.
And all that.
Jehovah's Witnesses are really good at only contacting you when they need you for something. If
Yes.
you're a person who can get anything done at all,
Yeah.
they see you. That's the one time in life they see you. They see you as that guy or that girl can get stuff done, or they have money, or they have a business and they can hire
Yeah.
me or whatever. And like a true narcissist, it's all about them and what they need. And so, boom, they're drawn to you like a magnet.
Yes.
Wow. So, what did you do from there? I mean, how did things go with your relationship with your dad? And I mean, was that just it, or?
Well, a couple weeks after, um, I called up my dad, because nobody else was answering their phone, and so I was excited because the daycare had, or the child care had gone through for me to actually start going to work. In 6 months' time, everything's set up, it's ready to go. So I was excited.
Nice.
So and considering all the crap that's happened, I finally had a happy moment, and so I called my dad, and I was like, things are good, and I just wanted to tell you that things are good, and I got a huge lecture on how I'm killing his grandchildren, and I need to go to the meetings because a brother will marry me and take care of me, and that's what's most important. And we had very little contact after that.
Yeah. I I know with my own family, there was kind of a is that a car driving by?
Yeah.
um, in my own family, there was this time where um, there really wasn't much to say anymore. It
Yeah.
was before my wife and I had ever disassociated. It was even before I think we had seen my disfellowshipped brother and made that choice and took that stand. Um, I think that they could kind of tell that we just weren't really into it anymore. We weren't into the whole witness thing. We were pulling away, and they just like there was just nothing to talk about anymore. Like it, that's all they have. So, and they don't care about anyone or anything beyond that. Um,
No.
Beyond what they're doing at the Kingdom Hall or whatever. So there's just nothing left to say. It's just
No.
done. It's
No. And
it's
Dad became so obsessed
yeah.
because of his hope he's going to see them again. So he needs to be as faithful as, he needs to follow the rules to
Right.
the letter and just be there.
Yeah.
So it gave nothing else to talk about, like you said.
Wow. So then what have you done? So that would have been, I mean, so I think
A
you
couple
said,
months ago.
yeah, a couple months ago. Wow. So what has transpired in these last few months? How has life been?
Um, well, there's been a lot of therapy involved.
Good for you. Therapy is very important.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. But I recently found out um, that Dad buried Mom a couple of weeks ago and never told me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that. So did you that's horrific. I mean, did you go to a memorial for it or were you even told about it or anything?
I went to the
You
service.
did go to
Yeah,
the service for your mom.
I did go to the service.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm
Of course,
guessing more of the
it was
same.
the same thing,
Yeah,
very impersonal.
sure.
With my sister, the burial was very personal, because it was just the family there, and I don't know, symbolic in some way. I guess it was just quiet. It wasn't a recruitment, a scene, nosy people. It wasn't. It was just us, And so I was just waiting to have that with Mom, and he just went ahead and buried her and didn't tell me.
I'm sorry. That's horrible. That's
Yeah, it's I've thought of every possible, because he thinks he's going to see her again really soon.
right.
So the burial wasn't important to him. He didn't need to be there. He wasn't there himself.
Oh, he wasn't even there. Wow.
He wasn't even there. No, he just gave the okay for my grandfather to bury her.
Okay.
But I mean, he could have just texted me and told me the time and
Yeah. Do you
date.
even know
But
where?
yeah, she was buried with my sister.
Okay. Um. So
But
yeah. So you can visit, I guess.
yeah. But it's just when you have your mind set on how it's going to be,
Oh,
because I was
sure.
like, this is like, I could picture it like this, because I hadn't cried or grieved, or this was going to be my time to just let it go.
Yeah.
And
And he took
he
it.
took that from me and never said another word to me. Not a word.
That's
My aunt had to tell me. And
I've
of course, she's worked up about having to tell me. She's
yeah.
all nerved up. So she just spits it out. Oh, by the way, she says, spits it out.
Oh man. I've heard of this. I've heard I've actually read on forums where I guess maybe even beyond this, they where people didn't even know that a parent died, and they just
Really?
yeah, yeah, and then they just find out later
Oh,
through
wow.
someone else because nobody tells them. Um, yeah,
Wow.
I can't. I don't even know. I don't.
See, I had never heard of anything
Yeah,
like that before.
yeah. I was. My dad died 2.5. I don't know, something like that, 2.25 years ago, something like that, and I was shunned at the time, and I was able to go to my mom let me come to hospice to see him, but one last time. But as soon as I left hospice, that was it. Like I wasn't going to be invited to the memorial or anything like that. So I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but that's just how it was going to be. So um, they don't. Jehovah's Witnesses rob you of the ability to grieve properly. Um,
Yes.
I remember when I'm honestly I'm kind of weird around death. I don't. It's something I'm still, I guess, processing myself. When you grow up in the cult, you don't think you're ever gonna die, and it's like somebody told me at 38 years old that I'm gonna die. Someday, like that. I know that's so weird for anyone listening who was never a witness, but when you
Yeah.
you buy into that, like I never even
Yeah.
thought about death as a possibility. We weren't supposed to die. The world was going to end, and we were going to walk into a little paradise, and it's gonna be like Adam and Eve were, back in the day. But you know, one of the things that when I had one person that I cared about die when I was a kid, and that was my grandfather. And he was never a witness. He was just a good dude. And I remember, going to the viewing and things like that, and how emotional it was. I remember afterward being able to go back to my grandparents' house with family around, and we sat around and we told stories and we laughed and we cried, and there's a catharsis in that, and there's a catharsis in being able to, I would go back to my grandma's house and my grandpa wasn't there, and somehow I think that helps you. I was just a kid, but it helps me, kind of grasp what had truly happened. And when you're shunned, you get none of that. I never got to go back and see my dad's chair empty. I never ever got to talk to a family member again and reminisce about the good times or even the bad times. Um,
Yeah.
they just that possibility doesn't exist, and it's just the most. Jehovah's Witnesses are pretty inhuman already, and then they just take away that last aspect of dignity and humanity in the most personal of situations, and it's just uh, there just really aren't words to describe that. And I'm sorry that so much was taken from you, um, and that just seems hollow.
It's yeah, they strip you of all your rights.
Yeah,
You're no longer a family member. You're
yeah. Somebody described it as being a ghost,
yeah.
and yeah, you're ghosted. You just they just disappear one day, and um, I think that on some level we're used to that, or maybe I don't know. I can't speak for you. You had such a small cluster of people around you as a witness growing up, but
Yeah.
I grew up in a large congregation, and I was used to just people come and people go. Like, I mean, I had so many friends who got disfellowshipped and just disappeared, and I didn't know what happened to them. And so I guess for me, death was kind of the same. They just disappeared. I'm just used to that. But that's not normal.
No. No.
It's not normal at all. And I'm so glad that you have a therapist who I guess knows what normal is around this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, and it was good for my kids too,
yeah.
because I reached out to a lot of people. Araya's 4 years old, so she's my oldest, and she understood what happened to some degree. I needed to have that conversation with her, and of course, there's a room full of people, all telling their children that my mom is just sleeping. She's gone to sleep. She'll be back
Right.
in paradise. That's what they're telling all these kids. And so I had reached out to child specialists on how to deal with this properly. And so she was there visiting me at the hospital, and my mom. And she comes out to talk to me, and she said, and I'm asking her, what do I say? And she says, just promise me that you won't tell your children that she's sleeping.
Wow.
Because every time your child goes to sleep, they're going to think that they're not going to wake up.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
Yeah. And neither had I.
Oh
So you
wow.
have to I really had to rewire that witness thinking at that point to handle things properly with the kids. And that's why the burial was so devastating to me too, because it's good for kids at that age to understand that they're gone.
Yeah.
They can see it, and then they understand it.
Yes.
And that was taken away from my kids too. My kids, I'm not going to say that I did anything wrong, but in their eyes, I did do something wrong, and hence I was cut out of the picture. But my children didn't do anything.
Right.
So it is pretty unfair to them. But I hadn't realized until I was talking to these people what these Jehovah's Witness children are told, and how detrimental it can be.
Yeah, I never even thought about some of those aspects.
Yeah.
Well, so then are you now like officially out, or what is your standing?
They haven't disfellowshipped me, but I'm viewed as such.
Yeah.
There's no contact, or my dad treats me as such, and which he made quite obvious over the last month. But I now that everything's done and settled, I finally feel free.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Well,
I'm gonna raise my kids the way I want to raise my kids, and not feel guilty or pressured for it. And
well, is there anything, what are you, I don't know. I know I gave you a list of questions. And I know you've worked pretty hard on some of the answers.
yes.
Is there anything, I'd like to talk to you now about, where you want to go going forward,
Yeah.
but, is there anything that you want to touch on, like why others would think you left, or what you'd like people to know about the religion or anything? I mean, this is also fresh. There's some of these questions, I don't know if you've had enough distance to be able to process some of this stuff.
Yeah. No, mostly the point that I had wanted to make from all this is either people that are leaving, or have left, or know of witnesses, is just to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't let them, you back down from 1 second and they will take everything. They, despite what they say, we still have rights, and you can fight it.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the things I remember, there was a point where I realized that pretty much what you said, they'll take everything. They just, Jehovah's Witnesses just take and take and take until you have nothing left.
Yeah.
And they never give you anything in return.
Yeah. And they make you feel guilty for it. I've been constantly tiptoeing around my dad's feelings. I should have stood up and asked him where mom was, because they didn't bury her right away. I should have called up and demanded the answers that I deserved, and then I would have been there if I had have stood up for myself. But instead, I just took the shunning and kept quiet so that I didn't hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
Or make him uncomfortable. And because of that, I lost my rights because I didn't stand up. There's no fixing that now. I'll move forward from that. But other people that haven't been there yet, I hope that nobody does, but you can fight for it.
Yeah. Do you think that your dad would have told you?
I think, yeah. If I had confronted him and said, where is mom, and asked him direct questions, he would have answered them.
Okay. Well, all right. Yeah, I just wondered.
He probably would have answered them, but he wasn't going to initiate any kind of conversation with me, and so I just let it go. I just trusted that with something of that gravity, that he would tell me when it was time.
Oh, well, of course. Yes, of course you would.
I didn't expect the shunning to go to that extent.
Right.
I had never heard of it before. I didn't know that it had happened to anybody else, so I didn't see it coming. And
sure. Well,
I just let it happen.
Yeah. This is a great, warning to other people.
Yes.
Now they can know that, yes, this is as far as it can go. They can. I'm sure there's some way it can even go farther. Like I said, Some people never even know.
If they can take it from you, they will.
Yeah, they'll take. Yeah, that's true. They'll take it all.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry that so much was taken from you. Um, it's it's not fair, and they're really they're just. I'd give you a hug if I was there. there's
Thank
just
you.
there's just not words that can really even touch the breadth of this experience. But you do have uh, this new freedom, like you said.
Yeah.
You are finally set free. I
Yeah.
will say that for all of us, as long as you have family that's in, there's always like this tie. It's hard to ever, I guess, truly be set free. I mean, I guess nobody's ever free from anything in life 100%. Um, but the freedom that you get is just so it's just so it's so amazing
Hmm.
when you realize that your life is finally yours.
Yeah, there's no expectations
Yeah.
or your guilt put on you, or
Yeah.
it's that's gone, and it's pretty great.
Yeah. So where are you now? And what do you want out of your life now?
I want to figure out who I am and what I like,
Yes.
now that I'm allowed to do that. I've
Yes.
given myself the freedom to do that. I walked into my therapy one day and to start it off, and she said, tell me who you are and what you like, and let's start there. And I just look at her and I got nothing to say, and I just think for a minute, and I said, well, I love my children.
Yeah.
I know that. And that's all I could come up with. I didn't know what I liked to do, or who I was. I never got to just explore that. And so that's what I want, and I want to give that freedom to my children. I want to get to that place and share that with them. And it's not easy for the first little while. I felt so guilty for a long time, that it was so bad that at during the day I had to take pictures of everything I did in the day, and my children. Everything I did, I took a picture of it, so that at the end of the day I could look back and say, oh yeah, well, I did this good, and that was good, and realize that I did something good in the day.
Yeah.
Because when you're not living the witness lifestyle, you feel like you're not, you know, those expectations aren't being met, so you can feel less than, or like you're not accomplishing what you're supposed to. And I
Yes.
had to change that and
It.
realize that I can do good outside of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um. I mean, I've been out now for 2.5 years. I can say that I still feel, um, somewhat like what you're saying. Trying to um, figure out who you are and what you want, what you like, what you
Yeah.
don't like. There's this whole world to explore out there, and it's exciting. Um, it's scary at times, but as you go through this process and you discover these things, I mean, uh, it's just amazing. What actually is in this world and what we can experience, and the highs we can get out of life,
Yeah.
that were just never they were just never around in the environments that we grew up in. There was never any true joy,
No.
and you can have that now. And oh, and it's just so amazing. Anytime I hear of somebody who gets out and they have kids and they can give their kids that more from the beginning of life.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's just to give them that leg
It's
up.
it's funny too, because it's so exciting for me too. Like my daughter, we just celebrated her birthday. She's 4 now, but this is the first time actually, you know, celebrating it, and it was the most exciting thing. It was just so much fun. But my friends, they kept laughing at me. For one, I had no idea how to do a birthday party. I had never done
Oh, yes.
one. I never experienced one. So what am I doing here? They thought it was hilarious. And then the excitement that comes from it. They thought it was comical to watch me try these things for the first time, but
That's
it's
beautiful.
it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful to be able to, even at, you say you're 25, I think.
27?
Oh, 27.
Yeah.
To be able to, even at 27, whether you're 27 or I think my wife was 36 when she had her first birthday, like those things are just, it's just so much fun. It's a memory. And I kind of think it's cool because when you're an adult, you get to remember it. Like my wife will
Yes.
remember her first birthday. How many kids can say that?
Yeah.
So you'll get to do that too.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is awkward at first, to try to figure out how to do this stuff. But the cool thing is, you can do it how you want. You don't have to, you don't have like a family tradition that you need to stick to or something like that.
No.
It's yours. Do
Yeah.
what you want.
The problem is I would overthink it so much, like with the birthday situation. I would, then I was feeling bad for all the other kids because all the other kids aren't getting a present too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, well, this doesn't exactly seem fair. And, I'm just overthinking every aspect of a birthday. And my friends thought it was absolutely hilarious.
I'm sure it is from an outside perspective.
Yeah. Because I just don't get it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with you. That whole like, well, wait a minute. What
Yeah.
about the other kids? They're not getting a gift.
Yeah.
I know at my wife's first birthday party, I had gift. We invited a bunch of people, mostly people that we cleaned for, and some new friends we had made since we had been out. And we rented a place, and we invited all these people, and like we had like 70 people show up, and they had kids. And I'm like, this is my wife's first birthday. They're going to, these kids are going to see my wife opening presents and stuff that people got her. So I had little gift bags made for all the kids so that all the kids would have something, because I don't know how this works. And, it's cool that kids don't always expect something in life, but you don't know that. And I wanted them to have fun and walk away with something too. And so here it is, my wife's birthday party, and I spent all kinds of money, doing that,
Yeah, I almost did the same thing. I wanted to have a little something for everybody. And my friends are, they step in, I'm thankful for them. And they're like, no, they're getting cake. That's their present. They get cake. They will be happy with cake.
Yes. No, I totally get it. And every time it's somebody's birthday, I want to buy them something. And it's like, you know what? I can't afford to buy everybody something. And,
No.
it's, it is an interesting foray into the real world to see how things work. And,
it's definitely a learning experience.
It is. But there's so much good that comes from it. It's not all good. I mean, I'm sure, there's been, things that you have to learn that are a little, you might have anxiety around just because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Or at least that's me, because I have a lot of anxiety naturally anyway. I'm an overthinker. But yeah, it's just, there's just so much that you're going to get to experience, and you're going to get to experience so much through your kids. I'm just really excited for you. I think that it's great that you have this opportunity finally, to be able to be you and to live your own life.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I want to thank Tamara for being brave enough to put her story out there so soon, for being open to sharing some really tough things. And honestly, I couldn't be happier that she's finally found freedom from such a bleak and somewhat oppressive in ways, outlook. If you'd like to send a message of support to Tamara, you can do so by going to my website, that's shunnedpodcast.com, and you can leave a comment for her there on the episodes page. You can also find the resources that were mentioned in the episode there and the video for the song that she chose to represent her journey. Um, in fact, you should be able to, on your podcast app, you can probably find those same resources if you look there. All right, now that's not the only place that you can comment on the episode. We also have a Facebook group called Shunned Podcast, where we have people discussing episodes and their own lives. And I try to do things to encourage members to find good things in life and to grow. As I stated earlier, I want to give you some highlights of the past month in there, just to kind of give you an idea of the supportive group that's forming. Every Wednesday, we post things that we're happy about in life this week. And every weekend, we post things that we're doing for ourselves as part of self-care, something that we were never really taught to do in these cults. This month, we've shared our Halloween costumes, a lot of really cool things in there, the pumpkins that we carved. I made an announcement in there of a new project that I'm working on as well for the XJW community. We've also had one of our own that was just disfellowshipped, and unfortunately, he's now been officially shunned as well, and we rallied around him. So things are happening in there, and my goal is to keep it more about us as individuals and our stories and supporting one another than just, kind of keeping it the latest J-Dub stuff. There are plenty of groups for that if that's what you want. But this is kind of about us as human beings. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in, head to Facebook, look up the group called Shunned Podcast. You'll see the logo there, and just apply to join, and I'll approve you. You can also find the podcast on YouTube under the channel called Shunned Podcast, one word, and also on Instagram at Shunned Podcast, again, one word, and on Twitter at Shunned Podcast, again, one word. If you'd like to hear my story and great insight into how the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses works, you can do so at the podcast called This JW Life, also found at thisjwlife.com. We haven't really had any new Patreon supporters for the past couple months, but I want to take the time to seriously thank the people that really helped me make this show possible by supporting it financially. The show takes not just work and time, but there are also costs involved in getting the audio hosted, the website, and doing transcripts, keeping the equipment working, all that kind of stuff. You can show support for the show for as little as $1 a month, and it means the world to me to know that others are in this with me. It's encouraging to see people that want to support what I'm doing here. You can do so at patreon.com/shunned if you're so inclined. Oh, and another great way to support the show, both the Shunned Podcast and also This JW Life, both can use it. Just go over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review for them. It helps them get found in the searches on there so that more people can find it, and the more people that find it, the more people that can be helped by these podcasts. Next month, I'm going to have a fascinating interview. I'm pretty excited about this one as well. It's with someone that will be kept anonymous, as long as she wishes to be kept that way. This person grew up in a small racist cult that was essentially a family cult. You might say it was kind of a white supremacist cult in doctrine, but it wasn't, it wasn't with the intense hatred and the violence that sometimes is attributed, to those groups. But, the doctrine itself, was kind of in that realm. But what you're really going to see in there, along with that, is just how a cult forms, how it starts. I was just amazed when I was doing the interview. It's a look into the seed of a cult, how it can grow from one person and one person's ideas, and it's really fascinating. And I think this is an important episode, not just because that, but also because behind it is a woman that has been through so much, and that is a beautiful person that shines through all the ugliness in her past. So we're going to close out this episode with the song No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. You can find a link to her song, to the Patreon page for the show, to resources that were mentioned, and more, not just on the website, but if you're listening on a podcast app, you can probably get it all in the app by looking at the description as well. So, as we end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
We'll curse God